Hello guys, investigative blogger Crystal Cox here, and I planned on talking about this topic last summer, but I'm just now kind of getting to it. It's hard. First of all, I want to thank Michael Brown and Eric Garner for their life, and I am very excited at what hopes to be change. I have been doing investigative blogging for over a decade now. And yes, the racial issue is very real. The Eric Garner thing, they would not have walked up and choked a black guy to death, a white guy to death like that. If he said, "I can't breathe," they'd have let up. The guy said, "I can't breathe," 11 times. And that asshole thug of a cop just kept choking him. It's as if some of these white cops just are afraid of black men. You know, they think they're superior and they just want to teach them a lesson. It really does seem like a basic fear, you know, maybe how they were raised or whatever. We need to change it as a society, and it needs to be a real spiritual change. And I do believe that there is serious racial discrimination, and it is sad that black people have to always be thinking of that, and always be thinking if they get pulled over by the cops are going to kill them. And I do understand that, and I definitely believe it is a racial issue. However, I've been blogging about this topic, like I said, for about 10 years, and I've lived it since I was probably 15. When I first got my driver's license, and I was stopped by a cop at a stop sign, and he offered me a way out of the ticket by meeting him after I dropped my friends off. That was when I was 15. Or 16, I just got my license, and it was a rolling stop, and it was my first, actually that was my second incident with a cop. A few years before that, I had taken this other boy's bike. We were playing, he was quite a bit younger than me, and yeah, I was being bratty. And I took his bike, and I was just teasing him of like, you know, you can't get it or whatever. I was like, I don't know, 10 years old, and the local highway patrol come over. I don't even know if he was in uniform, but I just know that he choked me. I couldn't breathe, and he got me off the bike. And so I myself have had a lifetime of fearing cops. I have done interviews where I said I would rather, I don't know, said something dramatic about a known murderer, or I don't know, you think of somebody really that would really maybe harm you. I'd rather them pull me over than a cop. Okay, I have an inherent fear of cops. I have never done anything to break the law, but I fear them, okay? Now, in Montana, when I first started doing the investigative blogging thing, I started writing about 40 rapes in 1 year that were not investigated. Okay, so the local prosecutor, just like the issue that's happening now in these cases, was friends with the cop and the detectives, and they protected everybody involved, really. There was DNA testing, there was rape kits done, there was a whole bunch of evidence, and these weren't investigated. Now, at this time, it was about 10 years ago, I had heard this stuff over and over my whole life. But I never really made a stand because, you know, once you stand up, it's a big deal, right? And I had a real estate company, and I'm a lesbian, so the minute I stand up against rape victims, I'm labeled a man-hater, and I am targeted on a whole other level, which is what happened. But one of the rapes was, there was 100 miles on the woman's car. There was rape kit, there was DNA, there was tons of evidence. I think there was even some recordings. There was massive amounts of evidence. But because the rapists were connected to local cops, local politicians, you know, they were kids of the elite, they were not punished in any way. It wasn't even investigated. Okay, well, this really upset me, so I started writing about this one rape, okay? And this led to writing about all of them, and there was a huge date rape drug, and the culture of rape in Montana, and I guess now I know worldwide really, it's rampant. They overlook it. There was a big investigation at the University of Montana by the Department of Justice after I had written on it. Nothing to do with me writing. It was some rich guy's kid that got raped, and so they brought in the Department of Justice. The Missoula police were doing nothing. In Eureka, it turned out a lot of the rapists were running drugs for the cops. I mean, I'd have people tell me, you know, cops were dealing drugs. It's a border town. Rumors were flying, and just, I opened up 30 years of corruption. I'm not talking about all of that in this video, but the point I'm making is that these two men, Michael Brown and Eric Garner, God bless you. You are our heroes. And I understand this is a racial issue. It so is. And I so honor that experience for the black people, and I stand with you. But I also want to say that this is an issue for all of us. Every single one of us who have tried to stand up for corruption, tried to stand up for good cops. When I was reporting on these rapes, I met a lot of good cops. I seen the files. I met good cops that were ran off the force. I met women cops that were ran out because they weren't listened to. So any kind of person that was a minority and wasn't part of the good old boys, they were ran out. They were made to look like they lied. Their evidence was hidden. And this could have been in men or women, you know, white, black, whatever, in small towns. It's basically anybody that doesn't agree with them and how they hide things. Okay, so I met a lot of good cops. There's nothing they could do but leave the force or leave the town. Okay, because the prosecutor, and in Montana it was Bernie Cassidy, I've written a lot about it. It's this same model we're talking about nationally now. The local prosecutor does not prosecute the cops. And if the cops have these thugs that are running drugs for them, and they're doing these rapes, they're going to protect them. They protect their informants no matter what they do. Okay, now I had a lot of reports about suicides, a gun, you know, bullet in the back of the head, no gun. Okay, so this was like in the Yak, Montana. So basically, the reports were that the cops were killing drug runners, and they were, I mean, huge. I had someone tell me once they're making like $15,000 every 3 days in meth. Make sure this is still on. And just, you know, huge, huge money in drugs. So when the cops would catch these folks with huge money on them, and they would kill them, and, you know, justify that somehow by just, whatever, investigating themselves, they would just take the money. So none of the reports would talk about the money, but the locals would talk about it in the bars and the, you know, in the beauty shops, at the cafes, and be like, oh yeah, there was $100,000 in so-and-so's barn. You know, okay, so they're basically killing the bad guys and taking their money and just covering it up. Okay, no due process. And were they bad guys? Were they running marijuana? Were they running meth? Were they running anything? Were they selling drugs for the cops? Now in Montana, there's okay, plea bargains are average of $5,000 to $25,000, so it's pay to play. If you can afford to get out of the ticket, you get out of the ticket. Okay. A lot of the women are, and some men I've heard, mostly women, they get out of a ticket if they give a cop a blowjob. So basically you just meet the cop in the cemetery or whatever, they have them follow them somewhere, they just get the cop off and then they go. Okay, now this happens all over Montana, probably many places. So this is one thing that the cameras and having more surveillance over the cops will start to stop. Okay, sex with cops, whether it be oral or flat out to get out of tickets, happened over and over. Okay, I'd have these people call me and tell me these things that the cops would do. So they call the cops because they had an intruder. The cops would come and end up hurting, physically hurting the person who called the cops for help, protecting the intruder because they knew who the intruder was. Okay, so then when the homeowner would try to take the cop, they would be dealing with the local prosecutors. They would, before their trial, they'd get noise pollution, anything that was doing them with their car, any tiny little law they could get to make that person look bad so that when they went through the trial, the cop looked good. Okay, there was a lot of reports of suicides in jail. They weren't, they were death by cop. So yes, this is a black racial issue, but this is a corruption issue. This is cops, mostly white cops. This is drug runners. This is a societal problem. This is a spiritual problem. This is cops who think that they're above the law and they're pure evil. And you know what? I think they're a minority. But they're in charge, right? And they're ruthless, right? So the good cops, they just go home and cry, and I've heard many of their stories, and I've heard many of them cry about the women raped that they couldn't help, about fingernails in the dash and horrible rape scenes and cars hidden with all the DNA and everybody's protected, and they're protected by the bad cops. Now, the key position to all of this, and I've written about this, like I said, 10 years, I've known about it my whole life. The key is coming out in the media now with these two cases. That is the prosecutor, okay? And now they're saying that they should have a special prosecutor to deal with anything to do with cops in local towns. Okay, I think that's great. They definitely do, because they have a relationship with the local cops and the local electoral base, and so they basically let cops go. That's not enough, folks. I mean, these prosecutors, like this one in Montana, let these rapists go because they didn't know, or they overlooked the connection with the rapists and the cops. Okay, so it would look like it's just a rape thing. It would look like it might be just a drug case or murder or suicide, but you don't really know that the cops are involved. So I think that at least a county over, but I would say a state. I think that there should be a state or a federal, there should be, the prosecutor should not be elected and part of that body. You know, the prosecutor that's a county prosecutor now should be completely removed from the situation. So every single case that they're trying and looking at, and with digital now, it should be easy. We got video, we got internet, we got documents you can do online. The prosecutor can study it all, you know, maybe fly into that place to do a trial or whatever, but have the prosecutors be outside no matter, in every single case, because that's what happened here. In my case, Bernie Cassidy, the prosecutor in Libby, Montana, horribly corrupt. He protected massive amounts of corruption. And it's not all to do with cop corruption. It's all kinds of payoffs and rapes and drugs and monies. And it was decades and decades and decades of it. Okay, so yes, this is a black issue. This is a racial issue. But this is also an issue of transparency and accountability in every police force, small and big, across the entire United States. This investigative blogging stuff, it changed my life. I almost said it ruined it, but you know what? I'm proud of what I did. But the root of what I've done and what I do, and setting my case precedents to give everyone equal power now as any big journalist in my Ninth Circuit case, this was about exposing corrupt judges, corrupt attorneys, corrupt cops. Okay? If crimes are prosecuted at a local level, I just don't think that there's any impartiality or any law. Every case I've reported on, I've filed tons of lawsuits myself. I've filed RICO and racketeering. I've done everything I can to report what it is that I found out about in the best way that I know how, and I'm shut down at every turn. You know, the cops have somebody everywhere. And I don't mean in general with cops, because I'm telling you, it is, bad cops are a minority. I've met many white, mostly I'm from Montana, so it's mostly been white, but white men and women, good cops, okay? The women are the minority. On a white cop force, blacks are minority, Latinos are minorities. The minorities end up being silenced and shut up, not listened to, okay? So even if you bring in more black people onto these forces, okay, well, are they going to be targeted? Are they going to be harassed? You know, if they're a good cop and they're trying to tell the truth, who protects the good cops? Nobody. I was telling their story, I was listening to them cry, there's nothing they could do to help these victims. And the top of the food chain locally that way is the prosecutor. I don't think that any prosecutor should be from that county, live in that county, locally elected. Nothing to do with the local politics. In every single case, that's the problem, and that's what they're bringing out in Ferguson County now. If these cops were more prosecuted, it's like murder, like the Garner thing. Hello? He said, I can't breathe 11 times. He had, what was it, like 7 cops holding him down. Why did that asshole have to keep choking? He was already pinned, he'd already given up. He was already tied, he already had a whole bunch of white assholes on top of him. And he still had this guy choking him. Because he was selling cigarettes, allegedly. Well, did he deserve to die? Did he deserve to be choked? He didn't deserve to be disrespected in any way whatsoever. How about a warning? How about a court date to prove whether he was selling those cigarettes? Nah. Let's just have a whole bunch of white men jump on him and kill him. Folks, that ain't right. And that's got to stop. And you know what? The video camera is a good thing. Every one of you should be videoing. Every one of you are the media, you are the news. You look at my case, Obsidian versus Cox, I've set a precedence in the highest court. not the Supreme, but the Ninth. You are media. There's tons of people out there who have set precedents for videoing the cops. It is your right. Do it no matter what the cops tell you. And get out of there. Because obviously in the Garner case, the guy that took the video, girl, I don't even know who it was, got arrested. Right? So the cops don't want transparency. And even if they get body cams, like people are saying, well, it wouldn't have worked in that case because the cops are getting away with it anyway. Still, videotape them from all sides. Because you know what? MSNBC is doing a hell of a good job. That Chris Hayes, you know, The Last Word, I think it's Martin Lawrence, that guy's amazing. He wrote a book on corrupt cops decades ago. Okay, this is finally coming to light and they're really exposing what's going on. What went on in the Ferguson case in the grand jury and what laws they gave the jury, that's another trick. Okay, now I've seen that in many of my writings where they give them the wrong law. They give the jury a law to look at because the jury doesn't know, you know, they're just regular people. They don't know the case. They give the jury, okay, you go by this law. Like, well, by that law, it looks like they're innocent. Okay, that's not the whole case. And so the media, like MSNBC, that went there when it first happened, that are really digging in, that are really pushing, this is an incredible pivotal moment in our history, and it's beautiful. I love it. I'm so thankful for these men giving their lives. It's not just black men, it's black women, it's white women, it's teenagers, it's children. There's victims at every single level. We need accountability and transparency at every level of the legal system. Every single attorney needs to be accountable. Every judge needs to be accountable. Every cop needs to be accountable. Every prosecutor. Okay, yeah, people screw up. People get feared. Things happen. Okay. But what I've written about the last decade and experienced for decades is not what that's about. It's plain holier than thou. It's I'm afraid of you, so I'm going to kill you. It's greed. It's I can beat you and choke you and hold you down, and so I will. I can take away your jobs, your livelihood. I can harass your children. I can harass you, take away your jobs. I can have sex with your daughters to get them out of tickets. I can pay somebody to plea bargain on something. You know, I might have committed murder. Well, let's plea bargain down to car theft, and you give me $25,000. Okay, there needs to be transparency and accountability at every single level. And these two men have gave their life for it. No, black men are not the only victims of this. Black women are, and like I said, it's across the board at every single town, every single level. And these two men have brought it to light by giving their life and their sacrifice, and I honor them for that. This is a huge, huge deal. And I stand with every black man and black woman that are in this fight. I stand with the protesters. I may not be in the streets, but I stand with you. This is a big deal. And yes, it is the racial bias against black folks is very, very, very real. And it needs to change. And to change that, we have to be able to take away the fear that men with guns seem to have of black men. I mean, they just have this basic fear and hatred and ew, and they just want to kill them. That seems to me that that's a spiritual thing. They have to be held accountable. That's very, very real. However, police brutality, police corruption, police doing what they've been doing to create victims has been going on for decades, for eons. So start a blog, report on it in your area, videotape the cops, okay? Police the police. You have that right. You are the media. You are protected in this. Tell the story. We need accountability and transparency at every single level, every age, every race, every gender. Thank you for listening. Blessings to you all.